I didn't think I'd seen Disaster Movie before, and I am a fan of parody films. So despite the fact that it has 1.9 out of 10 on IMDb across 95,000 reviews and ratings, I thought I'd give it a watch. And it turns out I'd seen it before. When I started watching it, a lot of it came flooding back to me. Is that a sign of a good film? Well, honestly, I kind of liked it. I'm not necessarily saying it's a good film in terms of the narrative, but I don't think this kind of film ever presents itself as being a good narrative. It is meant to just be as many parodies as they can fit in. And the thing about parodies is that they're only entertaining if you understand the source material, if you know what they're parodying, if you get the references. When this first came out in 2008, it's directed by Jason Friedberg and Aaron Seltzer, for information. And when it came out in 2008, I don't know if that's when I saw it, but there are definitely a lot of things in this I wouldn't have picked up on. I had no idea who Dr. Phil was at that point, for example, and he is parodied in this at one point. And there are a lot of films in this that I wouldn't have seen at the time that I have since then seen. And maybe that's why I kind of enjoyed it, because there were a lot of references that I did get, so that there was that element of relatability. The narrative itself isn't great. As I said, I don't think it's meant to be, but basically a bunch of our central protagonists are in a parody of a disaster film, and it feels like the Earth's going to end and things are falling from the sky, and it's a cliche disaster film, but it works very well. As I said, it's maybe not the most gripping narrative, but with the type of film it's trying to be, I do think it worked well, and there are so many parodies in this one, and I feel like the ones that irritated me the most would be Juno and Enchanted. Enchanted maybe only slightly, but the Juno character I think got far too much screen time. There were a couple of other characters that I think had too much screen time, and then there were characters that I think were maybe more interesting that we hardly got to see. So for me personally, I think the balance could have been shifted a little bit to make things a little bit varied and to make the jokes a little bit more varied. But in general, the parodies worked really, really well. And there are many, many of them. Some of them that I definitely couldn't remember. I had no recollection of the My Super Sweet 16 parody. But things like the Alvin and the Chipmunks parody, I'd forgotten about until I started watching it. And that came flooding back. So I think the fact alone that I could remember a lot of this once I started watching it is testament to how memorable it is, at the very least. And if a film is memorable, that's better than an unforgettable film. Is it funny? Not really. I think for me, what works the most is the element of surprise, of wondering who they're going to parody next, what characters or what films they're going to parody next, and obviously the exciting part is when you get the reference, when you understand the parody. Some of them are blatantly obvious. For example, when they parodied Hannah Montana, it was very obvious that it was Hannah Montana because they were talking about, in fact, Hannah Montana was talking about Hannah Montana, by which I mean the parodied character in the film. There are maybe a couple of other parodies that I didn't pick up on that maybe didn't mean anything to me, but in general, I feel like everything made a lot of sense, and it's a very, very easy film to watch. And as long as you're not looking for anything profound or completely gripping or compelling, and if you like parodies in general, I'd say give it a go. I wasn't expecting to enjoy it as much as I did. And again, that's not me saying that it's the best film ever, or that the narrative is amazing and well written and the characters are fascinating and complex. But it is a parody film. And as far as parodies go, I think they did quite a lot of great work, and there are a lot of great parodies in there. And that aspect of it, I think, worked very well. So I don't think it deserves the 1.9 out of 10. And I don't know if those 1.9 out of 10s come from people who were expecting something profound, or if they are generally from fans of parodies and they just didn't like the parody aspect. I'd love to know what you think of it. If you're going into it as a parody fan, did you think the parodies worked or not? Personally, I didn't find it funny, but most of the parodies were good. Some of them, as I said, were a bit overused. For example, the Juno parody, it was just the same thing over and over again. It got old really quickly. But generally, there's a decent amount of variety. So as long as you're not expecting something serious, As long as you're in the mood for something a bit, in fact, very ridiculous, then give it a go. It's not bad. It might not be the best film ever, but as far as parody films go, Disaster Movie is not too bad.